Welcome to the Hidden Corners, where truth and terror collide. Discover a realm where the lines between the living and the supernatural blur, as you embark on a journey to the paranormal and visit the mysterious hidden corners of your mind. Happy Halloween! Tonight, we have a very special short story by Ray Bradbury called The October Game. Mitch Wilder wanted a boy, but after his daughter was born, his wife was unable to have more children. Over time, Mitch loses all love for both of them, and on Halloween, decides to take revenge on his wife for not giving him a son. This is one of Bradbury's darker stories, so beware, it's a chiller.
The October Game by Ray Bradbury. He put the gun back into the bureau drawer and shut the drawer. No, not that way. Louise wouldn't suffer. It was very important that this thing have, above all, duration. Duration through imagination. How to prolong the suffering. How, first of all, to bring it about. Well, the man standing before the bedroom mirror carefully fitted his cufflinks together. He paused long enough to hear the children run by swiftly on the street below. Outside this warm two-story house, like so many gray mice, the children, like so many leaves. By the sound of the children, you knew the calendar day. By the screams, you knew what evening it was. You knew that it was very late in the year, October, the last day of October, with white bone masks and cut pumpkins and the smell of dropped candle wax. No, things haven't been right for some time. October didn't help any. If anything, it made it worse. He adjusted his black bow tie. If this were spring, he nodded slowly, quietly, emotionlessly, at his image in the mirror. Then there might be a chance. But tonight, all the world was burning down into ruin. There was no green spring. None of the freshness. None of the promise. There was a soft running in the hall. "That's Marion," he told himself. "My little one." All 8 quiet years of her, never a word. Just her luminous gray eyes and her wondering little mouth. His daughter had been in and out all evening, trying on various masks, asking him which was most terrifying, most horrible. They had both finally decided on the skeleton mask. It was just awful. It would scare the beans from people. Again, he caught the long look of thought and deliberation he gave himself in the mirror. He never liked October. Ever since his first day in the autumn leaves before his grandmother's house many years ago, and heard the wind and sway the empty trees, it had made him cry, without a reason, and a little of that sadness returned each year for him. It always went away with spring. But it was different tonight. There was a feeling of autumn coming to last a million years. There would be no spring. He had been crying quietly all evening. It did not show, not a vestige of it, on his face. It was all hidden somewhere and it wouldn't stop. A rich syrupy smell of sweets filled the bustling house. Louise had made out apples and snoozeskins of toffee. There were vast bowls of punch, fresh mixed. Stringed apples in each door, scooped, vented pumpkins peering triangularly from each cold window. There was a water tub in the center of the living room, waiting, with a sack of apples nearby for dunking to begin. All that was needed was a catalyst, the inpouring of children, to start the apples bobbing, the stringed apples to penduluming in the crowded doors, the sweets to vanish, the halls to echo with fright or delight. It was all the same. Now the house was silent with preparation, and just a little more than that. Louise had managed to be in every other room, save the room he was in today. It was her very fine way of intimating, "Oh look, Mitch, see how busy I am." So busy that when you walk into a room I'm in, there's always something I need to do in another room. Just see how I dash about. For a while he had played a little game with her, a nasty, childish game. When she was in the kitchen, then he came to the kitchen saying, "I need a glass of water." After a moment, he standing, drinking water, she like a crystal witch over the caramel brew bubbling like a prehistoric mud pot on the stove. She said, "Oh, I must light the pumpkins." and she rushed to the living room to make the pumpkin smile with delight. He came after, smiling. "I must get my pipe." "Oh, the cider!" she had cried, running to the dining room. "I'll check the cider," he had said. But when he tried following, she ran to the bathroom and locked the door. He stood outside the bathroom door, laughing strangely and senselessly, his pipe gone cold in his mouth, and then, tired of the game but stubborn, he waited another 5 minutes. There was not a sound from the bath, and lest she enjoy in any way knowing that he waited outside, irritated, he suddenly jerked about and walked upstairs, whistling merrily. At the top of the stairs he had waited. Finally he had heard the bathroom door unlatch, and she had come out and life below stairs and resumed, as life in a jungle must resume once the terror has passed on away and the antelope return to their spring. Now as he finished his bow tie and put his dark coat there with a mouse rustle in the hall, Marion appeared in the door, all skeletons in her disguise. "How do I look, Papa?" "Fine." From under the mask, blonde hair showed. From the skull sockets, small blue eyes smiled. He sighed. Marion and Louise, the two silent announcers of his virility, his dark power. What alchemy had there been in Louise that took the dark of a dark man and bleached the dark brown eyes and black hair and washed and bleached the ingrown baby, all during the period before birth until the child was born? Marion, blonde, blue-eyed, ruddy-cheeked. Sometimes he suspected that Louise had conceived the child as an idea, completely asexual, an immaculate conception of contemptuous mind and cell. As a firm rebuke to him, she had produced a child in her own image, and to top it, she had somehow fixed the doctor so he shook his head and said, "I'm sorry, Mr. Wilder. Your wife will never have another child. This is the last one." "And I wanted a boy," Mitch said 8 years ago. He almost bent to take hold of Marion now in her skull mask. He felt an inexplicable rush of pity for her, because she never had a father's love, only the crushing, holding love of a loveless mother. Most of all, he pitied himself, as somehow he had not made the most of a bad birth, enjoyed his daughter for herself, regardless of her not being dark and a son like himself. Somewhere he had missed out. Other things being equal, he would have loved the child, but Louise hadn't wanted a child anyway in the first place. She had been frightened of the idea of birth. He had forced the child on her, and from that night, all through the year until the agony of the birth itself, Louise had lived in another part of the house. She had expected to die with a forced child. It would have been very easy for Louise to hate this husband, who so wanted his son that he gave his only wife over to the mortuary. But Louise had lived, and in triumph. Her eyes, the day he came to the hospital, were cold. "I'm alive," they said, "but I have a blonde daughter, just look." And when he had put out his hand to touch, the mother had turned away to conspire with her new pink daughter child, away from the dark forcing murderer. It had all been so beautifully ironic. His selfishness deserved it. But now it was October again. There had been other Octobers, and when he thought of the long winter he had been filled with horror year after year, to think of the endless months mortared into the house by an insane fall of snow, trapped with a woman and child, neither of whom loved him, for months on end. During the 8 years there had been respites. In spring and summer you got out, walked, picnicked. These were desperate solutions to the desperate problem of a hated man. But in winter, the hikes and picnics and escapes fell away with leaves. Life like a tree stood empty, the fruit picked, the sap run to earth. Yes, you invited people in, but people were hard to get in winter with blizzards and all. Only he had been clever enough to save for a Florida trip. They had gone south. He had walked in the open. But now, with the 8th winter coming, he knew things were finally at an end. He simply could not work this one through. There was an acid walled off in him that slowly had eaten through tissue and bone over the years. And now tonight, it would reach the wild explosive in him, and all would be over. There was a mad ringing of the bell below. In the hall, Louise went to see. Marion, without a word, ran to greet the first arrivals. There were shouts and hilarity. He walked to the top of the stairs. Louise was below, taking cloaks. She was tall and slender and blonde to the point of whiteness, laughing down upon the new children. He hesitated. What was all this? The years, the boredoms of living. Where it had gone wrong. Certainly not with the birth of the child alone, but it had been a symbol of all their tensions, he imagined. His jealousies and his business failures and all the rotten rest of it. Why didn't he just turn, pack a suitcase and leave? No. not without hurting Louise as much as she had hurt him. It was simple as that. Divorce wouldn't hurt her at all. It would simply be an end to numb indecision. If he thought divorce would give her pleasure in any way, he would stay married, the rest of his life to her for damn spite. No, he must hurt her. Figure some way perhaps to take Marion away from her, legally. Yes, that was it. That would hurt most of all. To take Marion. "Hello down there!" He descended the stairs beaming. Louise didn't look up. "Hi, Mr. Wilder!" The children shouted and waved as he came down. By 10 o'clock, the doorbells had stopped ringing. The apples were bitten from string doors. The pink faces were wiped dry from the apple bobbing. Napkins were smeared with toffee and punch. And he, the husband, with pleasant efficiency, had taken over. He took the party right out of Louise's hands. He ran about talking to the 20 children and the 12 parents who had come and were happy with the special spiked cider he had fixed them. He supervised pin the tail on the donkey, spin the bottle, musical chairs, and all the rest, amid fits of shouting laughter. Then in the triangular-eyed pumpkin shine, all house lights out, he cried, "Hush! Follow me!" tiptoeing towards the cellar. The parents on the outer periphery of the costume riot commented to each other, nodding at the clever husband, speaking to the lucky wife. How well he got on with children, they said. The children crowded after the husband, squealing. "The cellar!" he cried. "The tomb of the witch!" More squealing. He made a mock shiver. "Abandon all hope, ye who enter here." The parents chuckled. One by one, the children slid down a slide which Mitch had picked up from lengths of a table section into the dark cellar. He hissed and shouted ghastly utterances after them. A wonderful wailing filled dark pumpkin-lighted house. Everybody talking at once. Everybody but Marion. She had gone through all the party with a minimum of sound or talk. It was all inside her. All the excitement and joy. What a little troll, he thought. With a shut mouth and shiny eyes, she had watched her own party like so many serpentines thrown before her. Now the parents, with laughing reluctance, they slid down the short incline uproarious, while little Marion stood by, always wanting to see it all, to be last. Louise went down without help. He moved to aid her, but she was gone before he even bent. The upper house was empty and silent in the candle shine. Marion stood by the slide. "Here we go," he said and picked her up. They sat in a vast circle in the cellar. Warmth came from the distant bulk of the furnace. The chairs stood in a long line along each wall, 20 squealing children, 12 wrestling relatives, alternatively spaced, with Louise down at the far end, Mitch up at this end, near the stairs. He peered but saw nothing. They had all grouped to their chairs, catch as you can in the blackness. The entire program from here on was to be enacted in the dark. He is Mr. Interlocutor. There was a child scampering, a smell of damp cement, and the sounds of the wind and the October stars. "Now!" cried the husband in the dark cellar. "Quiet!" Everybody settled. The room was black. Not a light, not a shine, not a glint of an eye. A scraping of crockery, a metal rattle. "The witch is dead," intoned the husband. "Eee," said the children. "The witch is dead. She has been killed, and here is a knife she was killed with." He handed over the knife. It was passed from hand to hand, down and around the circles with chuckles and little odd cries and comments from the adults. "The witch is dead, and this is her head," whispered the husband, and handed an item to the nearest person. "Oh, I know how this game is played," some child cried happily in the dark. "He gets some old chicken innards from the icebox and hands them around and says, 'These are our innards.' And he makes a clay head and passes it for her head, and passes a soup bone for her arm, and he makes a marble and says, 'This is her eye,' and he takes some corn and says, 'This is her teeth,' and he takes a sack of plum pudding and gives us and says, 'This is her stomach.' I know how this is played." "Huh, she'll spoil everything," some girl said. "The witch came to harm, and this is her arm." Yee! The items were passed and passed like hot potatoes around the circle. Some children screamed, wouldn't touch them. Some ran from their chairs to stand in the center of the cellar until the grisly items had passed. "Aw, it's only chicken insides," scoffed the boy. "Come back, Helen." Shot from hand to hand with small scream after scream, the items went down, to be followed by another and another. "The witch cut apart, and this is her heart," said the husband, 6 or 7 times moving at once through the laughing, trembling dark. Louise spoke up. Marian, don't be afraid. It's only play. Marian didn't say anything. Marian? Asked Louise. Are you afraid? Marian didn't speak. She's all right, said the husband. She's not afraid. On and on the passing, the screams, the hilarity. The autumn wind sighed about the house, and he, the husband, stood at the head of the dark cellar, intoning the words, handing out the items. Marian? Asked Louise again from far across the cellar. Everybody was talking. Marian? Called Louise. Everybody quieted. Marian, answer me. Are you afraid? Marian didn't answer. The husband stood there at the bottom of the cellar steps. Louise called. Marian, are you there? No answer. The room was silent. Where's Marian? Called Louise. She was here, said a boy. Maybe she's upstairs. Marian! No answer. It was quiet. Louise cried out. Marian! Marian! Turn on the lights, said one of the adults. The items stopped passing. The children and adults sat with the witch's items in their hands. No, Louise gasped. There was a scraping of her chair wildly in the dark. No, don't turn on the lights. Oh, God, 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 don't turn them on. Please don't turn on the lights. Don't. Louise was shrieking now. The entire cellar froze with the scream. Nobody moved. Everybody sat in the dark cellar, suspended in the suddenly frozen task of this October game. The wind blew outside, banging the house. The smell of pumpkins and apples filled the room with the smell of the objects in their fingers when one boy cried, I'll go upstairs and look. And he ran upstairs hopefully and around the house. 4 times around the house calling, Marian! 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 Over and over, and at last coming slowly down the stairs into the waiting, breathing cellar, and saying to the darkness, I can't find her. Then, some idiot turned on the lights.
And now, in this chilling sequel to the October Game, we will read The November Game by Francis Paul Wilson. In the October Game, Midge Wilder, the cruel, angry father, disposes of his daughter in a particularly gruesome way as an act of vengeance against his wife. In the November Game, Francis Paul Wilson sees to it that Midge is paid back in kind for this dreadful act. What goes around comes around. Happy Halloween! 2 human eyeballs nestle amid the white grapes on my dinner tray. I spot them even as the tray is being shoved under the bars of my cell. Dinner, creep, says the guard as he guides the tray forward with his shoe. The name is Mitch, Hugo, I say evenly, refusing to react to the sight of those eyes. That translates into creep around here. Hugo leaves. I listen to the squeaky wheels of the dinner cart echo away down the corridor. Then I look at the bowl of grapes again. The eyes are still there, pale blue, staring back at me so mournfully. They think they can break me this way, make me pay for what I did. But after all those years of marriage to Louise, I don't break so easily. When I'm sure Hugo's gone, I inspect the rest of the food. Beef patty, string beans, French fries, Jell-O. They all look okay. No surprises in among the fries, like last night. So I take the wooden spoon, the only utensil they'll let me have in here, and go to the loose floor tile I found in the right rear corner. I pry it loose. A whiff of putrefaction wafts up from the empty space below. Dark down there, a dark that seems to go on forever. If I were a bit smaller, I could fit through. I figure the last occupant of this cell must have been a little guy, must have tried to dig his way out, probably got transferred to another cell before he finished his tunnel, because I've never heard of anyone breaking out of here. But I'm going to be a little guy before long, and then I'll be out of here. I upend the bowl of grapes and eyeballs over the hole first, then let the rest of the food follow. Somewhere below I hear it all plop onto the other things I've been dumping down there. I could flush the eyes and the rest down the stained white toilet, squatting in the other corner, but they're probably listening for that. If they hear a flush during the dinner hour, they'll guess what I'm doing and think they're winning the game. So I go them one better. As long as they don't know about the hole, I'll stay ahead. I replace the tile and return to my cot. I tap my wooden spoon on the Melmac plates and clatter them against the tray while I smack my lips and make appropriate eating noises. I only drink the milk and water. That's all I've allowed myself since they put me in here, and the diet's working. I'm losing weight. Pretty soon I'll be able to slip through the opening under that tile, and then they'll have to admit I've beaten them at their own rotten game. Soon I hear the squeak of the wheels again. I arrange my tray and slip it out under the bars and into the corridor. An excellent dinner, I say, as Hugo picks up the tray. He says nothing. Especially the grapes, I tell him. The grapes were delicious, utterly delicious. Up yours, creep, Hugo says as he squeaks away. I miss my pipe. They won't let me have it in here. No flame, no sharps, no shoelaces even. Suicide watch, they'd call it. But I've come to realize they've got something else in mind by isolating me. They've declared psychological war on me. They must think I'm stupid, telling me I'm in a solitary cell for my own protection, saying that the other prisoners might want to hurt me because I'm considered a short eyes. But I'm not a child molester. That's what short eyes means in prison lingo. I never molested a child in my life, never even thought of doing such a thing, especially not Marion, not little 8-year-old Marion. I only killed her. I made her part of the game, the October game. I handed out the parts of her dismembered body to the 20 children and 12 adults seated in a circle in my cellar and let them pass the pieces around in the Halloween darkness. I can still hear their laughter as their fingers touched what they thought were chicken innards and grapes and sausages. They thought it was a lark. They had a ball until some idiot turned on the lights. But I never molested little Marion, and I never meant her any harm either, not personally. Marion was an innocent bystander caught in the crossfire. Louise was to blame. It was Louise I wanted to hurt. Louise of the bleached-out eyes and hair. Louise the ice princess who gave birth to a bleached-out clone of herself and then made her body incapable of bearing any more children. So where was my son, my dark-eyed, dark-haired counterpoint to Marion? 8 years of Louise's mocking looks, of using the child who appeared to be all of her and none of me as a symbol of my failures, in business, in marriage, in fatherhood, in life. When autumn came, I knew it had to stop. I couldn't stand the thought of another winter sealed in that house with Louise and her miniature clone. I wanted to leave, but not without hurting Louise. Not without an 8-year payback. And the way to hurt Louise most was to take Marion from her. And I did. Forever. In a way she'll never forget. We're even, Louise. And you think your wife is behind these horrific pranks? Dr. Hurst says, leaning back in his chair and chewing on his pipe stem. I envy that pipe. But I'm the supposedly suicidal prisoner, and he's the prison shrink, so he gets to draw warm, aromatic smoke from the stem, and I get pieces of Marion on my food tray. Of course she is. Louise was always a vindictive sort. Somehow she's gotten to the kitchen help and the guards and convinced them to do a gaslight number on me. She hates me. She wants to push me over the edge. Well, let's think about this, he says. Your wife certainly has reason to hate you, to want to hurt you, to want to get even with you. But this conspiracy you've manufactured is rather far-fetched, don't you think? Focus on what you're saying. Your wife has arranged with members of the prison staff to place pieces of your dismembered daughter in the food they serve you? Would she do something like that with your daughter's remains? Well, yes, of course she would. She'd do anything to get back at me. She probably thinks it's poetic justice or some such nonsense. Well, tell me again what parts of Marion you've found in your food? I think back, mentally cataloging the nastiness I've been subjected to. It started with the baked potatoes. They almost fooled me with the first one. They'd taken some of Marion's skin and molded it into an oblong, hollow shape, then filled it with baked potato. I've got to hand it to them. It looked quite realistic. I almost ate it. Across the desk from me, Dr. Hurst coughs. How did you feel about that? Disgusted, of course, and angry, too. I'm willing to pay for what I did. I've never denied doing it, but I don't think I should be subjected to mental torture. Since that first dinner, it's been a continual stream of body parts, potato after potato, encased in Marion's skin, her fingers and toes amid the French fries, a thick slice of calf's liver that didn't come from any calf, baby back ribs that were never near a pig, loops of intestine supposed to pass as breakfast sausage, a chunk of Jell-O with one of her vertebrae inside, and just last night, her eyes in a bowl of grapes. The list goes on and on. I want it stopped. Yes, he says after a pause. Yes, of course you do. And I'll see to it that it is stopped immediately. I'll have the warden launch a full investigation of the kitchen staff. Thank you. It's good to know there's at least one person here I can count on. Tell me, Mitch, what have you done with all these parts of Marion's body you've been getting in your food? Where have you put them? A chill comes over me. Have I been wrong to think I could trust Dr. Hurst? Has he been toying with me, leading me down the garden path to this bear trap of a question? Or is it a trap? Isn't it a perfectly natural question? Wouldn't anyone want to know what I've been doing with little Marion's parts? As much as I want to be open and honest with him, I can't tell him the truth. I can't let anyone know about the loose tile and the tunnel beneath it. As a prison official, he'll be obligated to report it to the warden, and then I'll be moved to another cell and lose my only hope of escape. I can't risk that. I'll have to lie. I smile at him. Well, I've been eating them, of course. I'm ready for the tunnel. My cell's dark. The corridor has only a single bulb burning at the far end. It's got to be tonight. Dr. Hurst lied to me. He said he'd stop the body parts on my trays, but he didn't. More and more of them, a couple with every meal lately, but they all get dumped down the hole along with the rest of my food. Hard to believe a little 8-year-old like Marion could have so many pieces to her body. So many I've lost track, but in a way that's good. I can't see that there can be much more of her left to torment me with. But tomorrow's Thanksgiving, and God knows what they'll place before me then. It's got to be tonight. At least the diet's been working. Amazing what starvation will do to you. I've been getting thinner every day. My fat's long gone. My muscles have withered and atrophied. I think I'm small enough now to slip through that opening. There's only one way to find out. I go to the loose tile and fit my fingers around its edges. I pried it up with a spoon earlier and left it canted in its space. It comes up easily now. The putrid odor is worse than ever. I look down into the opening. It's dark in my cell, but even darker in that hole. A sense of waiting wafts up with the odor. How odd. Why should the tunnel be waiting for me? I shake off the gnawing apprehension. I've heard hunger can play tricks with your mind, and position myself for the moment of truth. I sit on the edge and slide my bony legs into the opening. They slip through easily. As I raise my buttocks off the floor to slide my hips through, I pause. Was that a sound from below? I hold still, listening. For an instant there I could have sworn I heard the faintest rustle directly below my dangling feet. But throughout my frozen, breathless silence, I hear nothing. Rats! The realization strikes me like a blow. Of course, I've been throwing food down there for weeks. I'd be surprised if there weren't a rat or two down there. I don't like the idea, but I'm not put off, not for a minute. I'm wearing sturdy prison shoes and stiff, tough prison pants, and I'm bigger than they are, just like I was bigger than Marion. I slip my hips through the opening, lower my waist through, but my chest and shoulders won't go, at least not both shoulders at once, and there's no way to slip an arm through ahead of me. I can see only one solution. I'm not comfortable with it, but I don't see any way around it. I'm going to have to go down head first. I pull myself out and swivel around. I slip my left arm and shoulder through. Then it's time for my head. I'm tempted to hold my breath, but why bother? I'm going to have to get used to that stench. I squeeze my head through the opening. The air is warm and moist, and the odor presses against my face like a shroud, freshly torn from a moldering corpse. I try to mouth breathe, but the odor worms its way into my nose anyway. And then I hear that sound again, a rustle of movement directly below me, a wet rustle. The odor grows stronger, rising like a dark cloud, gagging me. Something has to be behind that movement of stinking air, propelling it, something larger than a rat. I try to back up out of the opening, but I'm stuck, wedged. The side of my head won't clear the edge, and the odor's stronger. Oh, my God, it's sucking the breath right out of me. Something's near. I can't see it, but I can hear it, sense it, and it wants me. It hungers for me. It's so close now. It's something wet and indescribably foul slides across my cheek and lips. The taste makes me retch. If there were anything in my stomach, it would be spewing in all directions now. But the retching spasms force my head back out of the hole. I tear my arm and shoulder free of the opening and roll away toward the bars, toward the corridor. Who would have thought the air of a prison cell could smell so sweet, or a single 60-watt bulb 100 feet away be so bright? I begin to scream, unashamed, unabashed. I'd lay on my belly, reach through the bars, and claw the concrete floor as wails of abject terror rip from my throat. I let them go on in a continuous stream until somebody comes, and even then I keep it up. I plead, sob, beg them to let me out of this cell. Finally, they do, and only when I feel the corridor floor against my knees and I hear the barred door clang shut behind me does the terror begin to leach away. "Dr. Hurst," I tell them, "get Dr. Hurst." "He ain't here, creep." I look up and see Hugo hovering over me with 2 other guards from the 3rd shift, a circle of faces completely devoid of pity or compassion. "Call him! Get him!" "We ain't disturbing him for the likes of you, but we got his resident on the way. Now, what's this all—" "In there," I say, pointing to the rear of the cell. "In that hole, in the back. Something's down there." Hugo jerks his head towards the cell. "See what he's yapping about." A young blonde guard steps into my cell and searches around in it with his flashlight. "In the back," I tell him. "The right rear corner." The guard returns, shaking his head. "There's no hole in there." "It must have pulled the tile back into place. Please, listen to me." "The kid killer's doing a crazy act," Hugo says with a snarl, "trying to get off on a Section 8. "No, no," I cry, pulling at his trousers as I look up at him. "Back there, under one of the tiles." Hugo looks away, down the corridor. "Hey, Doc, can you do something to shut this creep up?" A man in a white coat appears, a syringe in his hand. "Got just the thing here. Dr. Hurst left a standing order in the event he started acting up." Despite my screams of protest, my desperate, violent struggles, they hold me down while the resident jabs a needle into my right buttock. There's a burning pain, then the needle is withdrawn, and they loosen their grip. I'm weak from lack of food and spent from the night's exertions. The drug acts quickly, sapping what little strength remains in my limbs. I go with it. There's no more fight left in me. The guards lift me off the floor and begin to carry me. I close my eyes. At least I won't have to spend the night in this cell. I'll be safe in the infirmary. Abruptly, I'm dropped onto a cot. My eyes snap open as I hear my cell door clang shut, hear the lock snap closed. No, they've put me back in the same cell. I open my lips to scream, but the inside of my mouth is dry and sticky. My howl emerges as a whimper. Footsteps echo away down the corridor, and the overheads go out. I'm alone. For a while. And then I hear the sound I knew would come. The tile moves. A gentle rattle at first, then a long, slow, sliding rasp of tile upon tile. The stinking miasma from below insinuates its way into my cell, permeating my air, making it its own. Then a soft, scraping sound, like a molting snake sliding between two rocks to divest itself of old skin, followed by another sound, a hesitant, crippled shuffle, edging closer. I try to get away, to roll off the cot, but I can't move. My body won't respond. And then I see it. Or rather, I see a faint outline, greater darkness against lesser darkness, slam between 4 and 5 feet high. It leans over the bed and reaches out to me, tiny fingers, cold, damp, ragged fingers flutter over my face like blind spiders, searching, and then they pause, hovering over my mouth and nose. My God, I can't stand the odor. I want to retch, but the drug in my system won't let me do even that. And then the fingers move quickly. 2 of them slip wetly into my nostrils, clogging them, sealing them like corks in the necks of wine bottles. The other little hand darts past my gasping lips, forces its way between my teeth, and crawls down my throat. The unspeakable obscenity of the taste is swept away by the hunger for air. Air! I can't breathe. I need air. My body begins to buck as my muscles spasm and cry for oxygen. It speaks then, in Marion's little voice. Marion's voice, yet changed, dried up, and stiff like a fallen leaf blown by autumn gusts from bright October into lifeless November. Daddy.